So hey, this is Phil LaMarr, everybody. We don't put on too many airs here. I have a green screen. You're visible. They can see you now. They can see your Pulp Fiction poster.
Well, I decided not to go with virtual background.
Yeah, it's
in case I wanted to do some prop comedy later.
Yeah, you got a few things you may want to juggle. So why not? I do appreciate the fact that perhaps the most iconic project you've ever appeared in, and you've appeared in a lot of projects. I mean, Mad TV for several seasons, which became a cultural touchstone of a show for a while.
Which is weird. It's funny because before we came on, you and I were talking about the change in perspective.
Yeah.
Because when I was on Mad TV, nobody was watching it.
Everyone can see it now.
People say, "Yeah, I'm doing this sketch comedy show on Fox." Like, oh, Fox? No, we don't get cable.
Don't get cable. Okay. Yeah.
Cut to the show lasted for 14 years.
Yeah.
With never more than a one-season pickup.
Really?
And now there are people who grew up with it who think of it as this amazing part of, when it's like, yeah, no, dude, that was 14 years on the bubble.
Mm-hmm. 14 years not knowing if you were going to come back. How many years were you a part of it?
I did the first 5.
First 5, okay. And
right after I left, they started getting decent guest stars.
Okay.
Because people whose kids were watching it suddenly discovered it. Like the 2 episodes after I left, guests were George Carlin and Kathy Bates. Before me, Kato Kalin and anybody who was on a low-rated show on Fox.
Okay. Yeah.
Who was the guy who played the doctor on Melrose Place? He did 4 sketches.
Wow. This is what happened with me with stand-up. In 93, I became a touring road comic. Like my first road gig was in 92, but in 93, I moved away from home. I took the leap. And 93 is about 5 years after the comedy boom had really just exploded. And everywhere I went, I would hear, "Oh, man, you got in too late. I tell you, a few years ago, oh, God, we were beating the crowds off with a stick. They were paying us with cocaine. Oh, boy, groupies." And every club I went to, the headliner was always just this guy who was just completely worn out. But he had stories, and they would just tell us, "Oh, man, back in the 80s. I just thought, I don't want to keep hearing this. I'm new. I'm excited to get started." And it was always, you should have been there.
See, that's actually what people who are like immigrating to America are getting now.
Yeah. You guys should have come a few years ago.
You should have been here 10 years ago. It was wonderful.
Yeah. It was. Well, that's my wife. She immigrated here from Venezuela back in 94. And she saw that things were unraveling in Venezuela then. She said, the guy we had was not Chavez, but I already saw, I was very politically active. I saw things were going, they were going south. So I moved. I couldn't convince my family yet. She moved. She taught herself English. She was married to a Yutz to appropriate. I'm going to culturally appropriate some Yiddish right here. She's married to a schmuck. And then that was her starter marriage. She got out of the way. But she taught herself English. She's a woman of color. So she is Black, Latina, and European. And I once asked her, I said, "Are you African American?" She says, "I'm Black. I don't use African American. I'm from Venezuela." And I said, "Well, you're allowed to call yourself whatever you want." And I said, "Now I think it's Latin X." And she goes, "I don't know what the fuck that is. Just I'm Latina." Okay. So she's Black, Latin, European. And she comes over here. She teaches herself the language. She gets any job she can think of, and she bullshits her way through every job interview and figures out how to do the job before they realize she was lying to them. And she worked her way up. She brought her whole family over. And I tell her, every July 4th, I tell her, "You're the most American person I know. You are more American than anyone that was born and raised here because you embody what we're supposed to be." Mm-hmm. Yeah. Somebody who comes in and says, "I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to figure it out."
Right.
And yeah. And so, yeah, that she got here just in time. She got her family over before 9/11, right before 9/11. They got in. She said after that, it got harder.
Yeah. Yeah, sea change.
Yeah, now her dad is about 1 year away from becoming a citizen because he only came later because he knew a lot of people in Venezuela and he only came over a few years ago. Otherwise, he would have been arrested for no reason. And she says, now I'm confident he's going to get his citizenship, but
nothing is certain.
Yes.
But that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I get her take on a lot of the stuff that's happening, but I'll be 51 tomorrow, and she is 51, and she may be multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-everything, and she is very, very progressive, but she is not, even then, she is not nearly as woke as a lot of younger kids are. We are just a different generation.
Well, no, but see, that's actually one of the things is, as a minority, because that's the thing, it's so hard to find catch-all terms, but that's generally what I'm speaking about now, is someone who is, experiencing American society from a minority perspective, in whatever sense that means. You can have a revolutionary perspective.
Right.
You can be angry, or a lot of people from the exact same place can see it in a completely different way. It's like, no, I'm looking for my way up. I'm not looking for what's wrong. I'm looking for how I can get to what's right.
Right.
And they're very pro-American, and and it's funny because I'm from, in show business wise, a generation where it was about how do you make it work. It's a tough business for anybody.
Yeah.
And it's tougher for us. And nobody cares that it's tougher. So it's like, all right, well, some people just like, well, I'm going to lean into what I know, and it's funny because to me, Richard Pryor is a great example of the assimilationist and the, non-assimilationist, because he did both.
In the beginning of his career, yeah, he was like Bill Cosby.
Cosby.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be Poitier. I'm gonna be what they like. I'm gonna be non-threatening. Hey, I'm wearing my suit. And Ed Sullivan, thank you, Mr. Sullivan. We're doing it, But then he got to a point, he's like, screw that. I want to be black.
Yeah.
And then he went in the other direction. And it was like, and I'm sure there were agents, other comics. It was like, Rich, what are you doing, man? You're about to play Vegas. You can't do that.
I have your winter in the Catskills. Your summer in the Catskills is booked.
Right. Don't screw it up.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, I'd worked with George Carlin on the George Carlin show, and he went through the exact same thing.
Yep.
But not from a minority perspective.
No.
But just from, a mainstream versus non-mainstream perspective.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? Screw what they're telling me I need to do.
Yeah.
But
And we
then
don't.
there are a bunch of us who, no. I mean, because I see myself as having followed a lot of the Poitier model. It's like, no, I'm gonna look at the path they're willing to let me go through and do it as well as possible.
Right. Actually, you could argue that Poitier had to be better because there was a standard there that that the first one through the door is going to be the de facto spokesperson for everyone coming after, because whatever your first impression is, So, I mean, Poitier was that
5 times as good, and 8 times as calm.
Yeah. And the same thing, I think, with Harry Belafonte's path was a little different, but he's much more of an activist too. I mean, Belafonte is a guy who is definitely front line about a lot of things. And with Poitier, I think he saw himself perhaps as a diplomat, because, I mean, with Poitier, you got the sense that he was going to be the smartest guy in the room, in any room he was in, or at the very least, the most articulate guy in the room, because I get the feeling that he had to acknowledge that you were thinking about his color, and so he was going to put you at ease. And a lot of people now, I don't know if they would be able to identify that with that, but that was absolutely crucial that he did that, because if he didn't, he would have been just completely dismissed or disregarded, unfairly. But
right. Yeah, and it's interesting because, I mean, obviously now things have changed to a point, because a lot of people would have problems with that approach because, like, why are you giving them the power?
Why are you trying to make white people comfortable? Yeah.
Right. Whereas the perspective is like, well, they have the power. How do I make sure they use it for my benefit instead of against me?
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I mean, obviously, you can. I would question anybody to not judge anybody's tactic except by the time in which it was done.
Perspective. Perspective.
Right.
This is why, we discussed this. Yeah, context. There's John Fugelsang is a comic that I like to whenever I can. Yeah, whenever I can, I try to listen to his podcast, but he changed the time. It used to be it was always in the morning and I would catch it. Now it's in the evening and I'm busy with the kids. But he actually has a good way of looking at it. He says, I use the letters CIA. CIA, context, intent, audience. So when you're about to do something subversive or possibly offensive or whatever it is, something that could be misconstrued, what is the context in which they're doing it? What is your intent? And what audience are you doing it in front of? If you can answer those three questions in good faith, then you should be able to defend whatever it is that you've done. And
right.
Yeah.
Although this is sort of the problem that guys our age, like you, me, and John, have, is that those three things used to be within our control.
Yeah.
Now, audience, because the most of the people we talk to now, it's a generation that was raised with no line between personal and public.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So anything, it's like, oh, I went to this great comic at this thing now. Here's the bit he did. It's like, no. He did that in that room for those people. You put it on the internet, and now all of a sudden, he's an asshole.
Yeah, because you've changed the context. And by changing the context, now you can infer different intent. And you have no idea what his audience was because you weren't in the room either. And so this is why comics, I am very, very fortunate that I got off the road and that I got into voice acting well before the mob started to form for any poor comic who is trying to workshop material, because you can't workshop a bit unless you're in front of an audience. You can do it in front of a mirror, you can bounce it off your friends, but until you're in a club setting, a club venue, you really don't know if it's going to work. And now everyone has recording capability, and so you're strangling this thing in its cradle. Because you are already, we talked about this in journalism school, the chilling effect. Yes. The one thing you're trying to avoid is a chilling effect. And when a person is just too afraid to say something, then the conversation has been altered. It's like when you, I guess at the micro level, at the metaphysical level, you can actually alter the substance of a microparticle or a nanoparticle simply by observing it. Simply by judging a bit before it's come out, you've killed it. And
well, now, and think about this. The other aspect of that is, yes, you've killed the ability to workshop.
Yeah.
But what that does is it changes, in a lot of ways, the nature of comedy.
It has changed. Comedy's different.
Because for, our generation, it's like, no, you workshop a bit, you build it up, you get your time, everything was about growth. Mm-hmm. I think about people who are social media famous now. That's about striking a nerve. Mm-hmm. Whatever you do that gets the audience to pop, that's your thing. There's growth is no longer valued. Like, because we don't have time to do our 10,000 hours and fail somewhere because it's all recorded.
Right. Yeah.
So now, everybody's out there failing. If you're the one person who's like, I got up and I dropped my pants. That was great. A million hits. You're never going to be anything but the drop your pants guy.
Right.
It's like, you can't change it. That's what my fans want.
Dropping the pants.
Right?
Hashtag drop pants.
Drop pants.
This is actually what I have encountered here online in the world of Twitch and YouTube, because I learned years ago that I have a very active imagination, a very busy brain, and I needs to keep it occupied. Otherwise, it will eat itself. A lot of performers understand this. So there are people that do it with varying degrees of success. And you could be a very successful voice actor and still have 3 days a week where you're doing nothing that has to do with voice acting. You send in your auditions, the day is wide open. And so those wide open days were killers for me. I didn't fill them well. So I learned through the help of a wise friend, you have to be constructive, be working on something, be challenging yourself. So flash forward to today, and we have the internet, we have the Twitch, we have the YouTube. You can create your own content. When before you'd have to hire a bunch of your friends, buy them pizza, and find a theater. Yes, find a theater to book it in for a night and have all your friends come out again and watch it, and then it was done. And if you were lucky, you had a bunch of VCR copies of it you'd hand out to agents. Now you can create content. So I'm creating content in the best way I know how, and in the format I like. Like, I like having on lovely and talented people like yourself and chatting about whatever. But I've found that when I do that, there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of time for the conversation to breathe. And a lot of people are here saying, when are you going to play Apex? Because that's the game they know me from. Why don't you get on and be Pathfinder and suck as Pathfinder? That's why I watch you, because you suck as your character on the game I like. Do it right now. And I'm trying to tell them as the wise old man that I'll do that tomorrow. And then you can have your lollipop tomorrow. But today I have a different flavored lollipop. I want cherry. When I want it.
Because there's so many people, especially people our age, yelling about cancel culture. It's like, dude, this is just the logical extension of YouTube comments. The audience feels, I watched it, I own it. I am entitled to tell you what to do because I watched it. It's like, well, you didn't even pay for it.
This is this.
Audiences are so entitled.
I know. And this is when you even mention cancel culture. These are very, very live words, because I understand somebody who is an academic who is maybe being leaned on by their department you can't teach that anymore. If you're an essayist and you're getting squeezed out of your publication because you're expressing opinions that are not jibing with the current zeitgeist, I understand someone whose livelihood is being threatened by a mob of judgmental people. Yes, that is a way that a person can get canceled. I also recognize that there are some people who will throw cancel culture out there just as a buzzword because they feel put upon. I think Ricky Gervais said it best, and I am almost in lockstep with Ricky Gervais about many of these things. He said, and he hates PC culture, and he's extremely left, and he hates PC culture, and I hate PC culture. But he says, we have a pretty good system. If you tweet something and people hate it and they want to drive you off the platform, well, that's their right to do it. And if the platform wants to keep you, great. If they want to say mean things to you, that's your price for saying something they didn't like. He says, this is a self-policing thing. If people want to get somebody fired, I don't know. It becomes nuanced. People should be able to boycott if they want. You know, that's your choice as a consumer. I'm always afraid of the chilling effect, but
well, and it's a weird one because it is something that we have lived with, and we've seen people benefit from it. Remember, does the name Terry Rakolta ring a bell?
Rakolta. It should ring more of a bell, but it does not.
No, it shouldn't. Terry Rakolta was the woman who built the Fox network.
Oh, really?
Because she hated Married with Children. She thought Married with Children was the end of Western civilization, and she mobilized boycotts.
Okay. She was, all right.
And what she did was she made a bunch of people who didn't have cable
start watching the show, yeah.
Who weren't watching. It's like, wait, it's like, this thing, it is sexist, it is filthy, they have this tarted up girl running around with her boobs bouncing. Like, wait, hold on, wait, where?
Yeah, I know. And that show basically had two jokes, because I used to watch it a lot. And when I was in college, I loved that it was so obviously offensive. But it had two jokes, or three jokes. I have no money. My wife always wants to have sex with me, and I can't stand her. My daughter is a slut. I mean, and I got, oh, what's my son? He's a horn dog who can't get laid. I mean, you'll see these 4 jokes in rotation throughout the series. I mean, done about as warmly as you can do them if you compare them to what's going on now, you know, but it was the show that came on after The Simpsons. So subversive.
Oh yeah.
And now.
Isn't it funny that, you know, that attempt at canceling blew it up?
Yeah.
And I mean, because I mean, my big thing is, I'm with you and Ricky on the sense that no, if you have freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom from consequence.
Right. Let consequences fall where they're supposed to.
And you know, and people are like, that's censorship. It's like, no, it's only censorship if you're the government.
Right.
Like if you know the LAPD goes in and pulls out, you know, your streaming equipment.
Yeah.
That's censorship.
Right.
You know, but if a bunch of audience members say, boo, I don't like you. And the thing is, the really controversial people online know this.
Yeah.
They don't hate cancel culture. They love it because it weaponizes their enemies for their allies. Look how mad they are at me.
Yeah.
Don't you want to support me?
Yeah.
Here's my GoFundMe for my hurt feelings.
Right. Yeah, if you keep playing this out Socratically, cancel culture can create a chilling effect, but it also creates martyrs. And people have learned how to weaponize and monetize virtually anything that scores of people are aware of. You just have to be shrewd enough to do it. So yeah.
Well, that's what's so weird about the difference in the business from where we started to where it is now. You know, because before it's like, okay, how am I with the studios? How am I with the producers? You didn't really worry about the audience, except, you know, as a stand-up,
right?
You worried about, you know, the specific crowd you were dealing with, you know, and getting your name up. But for most TV and, you know, film and stuff, the audience was secondary. But now we are in a business where attention is a commodity unto itself.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, he's huge on YouTube. Let's give him a role in a TV series. Whereas before, it's like, we've never heard of her. But William Morris says she's the next big thing. Let's have her read against Tom Cruise.
Yeah. It is so,
equally ridiculous and arbitrary.
Yeah, both. Yeah, if you're watching this is a lot of what we're going to talk about is we'll touch on everything. That's what my chats are like. We just go everywhere. But on top of that, we like to tell you about the business of show, about you folks that are interested in voice acting in particular, but also just acting in general, the paradigms that we had to deal with, because you and I, okay, we were in college in the 80s. I think you were probably just graduated by the time I was getting close to graduating. So the paradigm back then was, if you're going to go into show business, first of all, you don't need your degree. But if you have it, great. It helps to go to Yale. They have a nice little theater school there. I went to University of Georgia, had not zero impact. They had a nice journalism school, and I did a little theater there, but I learned stand-up at an off-campus bar. That's the impact it had on me. I got to go away. But the paradigm usually was, if you're going to be an actor, you don't need training, but man, are you going to be a lot better off if you get some. And whether it's through taking a good class or getting into a good school with a theater department, and then you got to go out, you got to get headshots, you got to find an agent, because there are so many gatekeepers to the promised land. To be able to get those auditions, you need representation. Now,
well, yeah, and that was the thing, is those gates
were
the only route into the promised land.
That was it.
You know, there were. I mean, yeah. If like you could not get on a TV show unless you had an agent with access to producers. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the exception maybe being a handful of local, you know, stuff. If you lived in, you know, Atlanta maybe, or Florida,
right.
You know, there was professional level local stuff happening. But wait, I do have to say one thing, and this is hilarious. Because you said, well, you're a trained actor. You went to Yale. I was an English major, Chris.
Well, I was an English minor. What do you know? I thought you were in the School of Drama there.
Exactly. Everybody does. Because actor plus Yale, people just do this completely screwed up math. No, I was an English major.
Okay.
Didn't get into Yale Drama School. Auditioned and didn't get in.
Well, it's because at the time you were not talented. Now, suddenly, weirdly enough, you're talented. So I don't know. It's just how it works, I guess.
You know, and the funny thing is, the only benefit in this career of going to Yale is exactly the mistake you made.
Yeah.
People assume it's like, oh, he must be highly because it's show business.
Yeah.
We're not a lot of readers. So they just look at the top line. And, but that, that perception has helped. And I think it's also helped sort of shaped my persona. Off air, we were talking about like, okay, as a minority coming up into show business in the 80s and 90s, what's your path? What are you going to take? And mine was, decided by a couple of things. One, when I was at Yale, I was doing improv with my buddies on the side, not in class.
Okay.
We started an improv comedy group. And I wound up traveling to Chicago and wound up studying with Del Close.
It was like the godfather of improv, right?
Of improv.
Yeah.
Just because we started this little group. And that, wound up just being hardwired into me. And so when I came back home to LA, I started the Groundlings because I was jonesing to do improv. And so that took me on the path that led to Mad TV. So it's weird because it's not because I'm a well-trained, Yale actor, but it's because I was at that school with those people at that time. Probably the same thing with you at University of Georgia. You had this, stand-up, opportunity off campus. Had you been at a different school, that might not have been there.
Yeah. I tell people, and by the way, my apologies for misrepresenting your background, but that's, if I had gone to Yale, I would not be disavowing people of that assumption either. Oh no, I wasn't in drama. Where were you in? English. Where are you going? Yeah. Come back. I'm still good. Yeah.
I can out myself now.
Yeah, exactly. I think the secret will be not as much of a bombshell.
Right.
But to that end, I worked with an actress recently on a Respawn game. That's the company that made Apex Legends that a lot of people are familiar with. On a Respawn game, which I can not say anything else about. She went to NYU, NYU School of Drama. I think it was NYU School of Drama. She said, right. I wish I could go back there and tell them their degree is worthless. She said, it's done nothing for me as far as getting jobs. It's done absolutely nothing. And I tried to make her feel better. I said, well, but you had experiences and those add up. Those mean something. But she said, yeah, but having that piece of paper didn't. And that's what people should realize. If you're going to be a professional in this business, you are going to have to be a professional. You're going to have a professional attitude. You're going to have a professional approach to your craft. And a school probably doesn't know how to teach you how to be a professional working actor. They can teach you how to interpret a character, build from within, things like that,
and give you an arena to experiment and to find. I hear what she's saying. The degree, the paper, doesn't really matter. It's not like if you're in finance,
right?
You come out with a degree from Wharton.
Yeah.
Oh well. I know that kid has learned this, and this. So I can bring them into my firm based just on that degree. There's almost nothing like that applies in show business.
It's tough. Yeah. Well, I think Val Kilmer went to Juilliard, and there was he might have allowed in some interview that having a Juilliard on his CV did legitimize him a bit, because if you're at Juilliard, you're there to study art. That's all you study. I don't think they have a welding class at Juilliard. So, but yes,
and that's the thing. The perception can actually work for you depending on what path you're going down. Like with me. Although I think had I been pursuing stand-up, that Yale degree probably would not have helped much.
No. No,
In fact,
yeah.
it probably would have worked against me. It's like, I ain't never heard of nobody funny come out of Yale.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to move you to the bottom of the list. Come back next weekend.
Yeah, I did work with a comedian who had a degree from Harvard, and I can't remember what it was in. I think it was
And he
philosophy.
wasn't writing for The Simpsons?
I know.
So he sure as hell ain't funny.
He's the one. He's the one that they didn't immediately vacuum up as soon as he came out.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it was a degree in philosophy. And we were working at a comedy club in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I was the feature, he was the headliner. And he was a funny guy. He was very dry. He was actually what you would think a Harvard comedian would be like. He's very droll and very dry and smarter than everybody in the room. But yeah, he said, and I've mentioned this before, he said, Harvard to me was not all that exceptional. The teachers, I didn't think much of them. He said, what I thought was great was the other students. I thought it was nice to be with that many exceptional people in my environment. And we talked about this with another actor I've had on the stream where I think it was with Rob Paulson, being surrounded by talented individuals who are willing and eager to challenge themselves. That is what is going to train you in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what you found by leaving Yale, apparently. Right. I mean, you were around exceptional people at Yale, but...
No, but when I was there, like the folks in my improv group, which is hilarious because of the, 12 of us who started it, I am the only person who pursued performance.
That's it.
Everybody else were engineers and business executives and lawyers. One of the guys I was in the group with, a white guy who was a far better rapper than me, argued a case before the Supreme Court last year.
Really? Nice.
So that's that kind of excellence.
But did he rap in his during his summation?
No, Clarence. It would have made Clarence Thomas very uncomfortable.
Yeah, you got to wait till the 5-4 goes the other way, and then you might be able to get away with a little freestyling. Just tell them that it was from Hamilton, and they'll know. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, somebody on the chat mentioned that Tom Morello's got a degree from Yale. Political science or social studies, it doesn't recall which. It could be either with that guy.
Tom Morello was Harvard.
Was Harvard? Okay, or no, Jean, the same person is saying, oh, maybe it's Harvard. Yeah. It is possible. He says, the rapping lawyer, someone should write a comedy about that. Trust me, they did in 1987, and it probably got killed in development hell, justifiably.
Right.
We were talking about this off stream. We may as well bring it on. 86, 87, the movie Soul Man came out with C. Thomas Howell, and yes, a blackface movie. And I looked at that movie when it came out. It was a piece of tripe. It was light. It was trying to make a statement, but it was written basically like a sitcom. If you stapled 3 sitcom episodes together, you would get that movie. And I look at that and I thought, I have yet to see someone drag that movie back out into the light of day to complain about it. And I guess maybe they feel like, no, we don't even want to waste time with it. But yeah, in the 80s, so many things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that was interesting because at the time it was being lumped in with, she's such a guy or he's such a girl, whatever, where the girl is pretending to be a guy.
Yeah.
Although, as a black man who was there when Soul Man came out, we were like, yeah, no. But because it was comedy,
yeah,
there was not really. It's like, okay, obviously this is a joke,
right?
So, and at the time there wasn't really, you couldn't make a case for going after it because everybody knew it was shitty, So it wasn't like, yay, this is our new thing. Like this represents America. Then somebody might have said something.
Right.
Had it been popular, we might have stood up. But what's a big difference between then and now? You didn't have the power of the R word. Back in 1987, white people weren't afraid to be called racist the way they are now.
Yeah.
Because back then, if somebody called you, why are you making this movie? That's race. Like, what are you talking about? There are 5 black people in the cast, and no one says the N-word. It's like, okay, right. If there's no racial violence, it's not racism. That, like, it was sort of like the pre-Me Too things. Like, well, if you didn't hold a knife to someone's throat, it wasn't sexual assault. It's like, well, actually, but that was the perspective back then. Now people go, well, actually, isn't there a big gray area between, you know, this extreme and that? Like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I guess so.
There are two very large factors in all of these topics too. One is the fact that everything has a gray area. Everything does have nuance. There are very few things that are black and white. Although I will say that bad improv is possibly the worst thing that's ever existed. I don't know. I would put it up there with crimes against humanity. I have had to sit through bad improv, and I think that's, I don't know. I've had every dental procedure done, and I think I would almost go back to that gum graft before I would go back to bad improv.
Okay, wow. You know what, Chris? I have gotten woke on bad improv.
Okay.
Because the funny thing is, 5 years ago, I was with you.
Okay.
I had been at the Groundlings. I had taught. I had hosted improv festivals, and I had seen the depths. Hi, well, we've been doing improv in San Antonio for 8 years. Like, yeah, you've been doing horrible things to yourselves and to audiences for 8 years straight with no one to tell you what you were doing. And it just got worse. But my kid went to high school, and they had a high school comedy sports team.
Okay.
Now, these are teenagers doing improv, you know, competitive improv. And I went to the first one. I was like, oh God. I made sure I didn't eat any dairy before I went in. Just, But then what it did was it awakened me to the fact that, oh, right, we started doing improv because it was fun. And it was about, for these kids, it was about the freedom. For teenagers who are constantly worrying about how they're going to be judged, they were given these skills, these tools, these exercises that allowed them to say whatever came to their mind without fear. And I was like, oh, shit, that's super valuable. Regardless of whether they know how to move a scene forward, their space work, they're mumbling through their references. I'm like, you know what? There is even a nuance, even in bad improv. Well, when those kids grow up and they're working in a bar for 8 years in San Antonio and still think they're great, then they must be killed. Therein
lies our distinction. I would agree with you. At that point, I wouldn't even consider it bad improv. I would say these are teenagers discovering the wonder of their own imagination and, yes, freeing themselves from social boundaries and concerns and anxieties. Yeah, that is joy. So I think what you're...
But it was also bad improv.
Well, yeah, but bad improv, yeah.
See, and that's where we go. The context creates the nuance. And
intent, audience, yes. The audience is a bunch of mainly parents who are there to watch their loved one, no matter who or how bad they may be. They, you know, in your own minds, like, that's my boy, that's my girl. Yeah, the intent is we're creating, we can't wait to show you this thing. We're putting on a play and context, obviously. But yes, to reference that, once you've grown up, like, I went to a play. I've only been to one play in LA. I don't typically like to go to plays. Okay. And it's for this exact reason that I'm about to inflict upon you. I was a drama minor in college, and I freely admit I was not a good actor in college, but I had enthusiasm, by God, and I was like one of those teenagers. I was just discovering my joy of performing. So people like,
you were so loud.
Yeah, you hit your mark. Did that big X on the floor? You stood right over it. Yeah, that's what I was. But I saw a play in Los Angeles because a friend was in it. And from the opening 10 seconds, I knew I was in for a rough ride because my friend was not the star. My friend is a good actress. So she had her little role in it. She was great, didn't hit a false note. But the lead was not an actor. And the lead was just regurgitating his lines in the right order. And I
probably paid for the theater, right?
Probably. And I started to get angry. I just sat there, this is not Boise. This is fucking Los Angeles. And I don't care that it's not a theater town. God damn it, there are professional actors everywhere. You should have found one instead of sticking yourself in it. And now I sat there and I put my head down like this. And my friend, whose wife was in the play, said, "I thought you were asleep." And I said, "I wish I was." And I literally wanted to hit the lead actor in the face with a shovel because he was doing this to me. And I thought, this is 2 hours of my life and I could have done anything else. And that, to me, is like, my point was, you should know better. You're supposed to know better, not to do this to me.
That's funny.
Yeah, but yes.
The one play. And that puts you off them for the rest of your life.
Hey, they're going to do art again. And it's going to be at the Amundsen, and it's going to be with Alfred Molina reprising his role. No, because I saw that one play in North Hollywood, and I wanted to fucking kill everyone in the room. No.
All right.
Yeah.
No, Chris, you've given me the idea. I'm going to start a theater therapy firm.
Oh yes.
Just to help people work through their vanity play one-woman show traumas.
Man, what do you think the outroom like that looks like? It's just a bunch of agents that's like, I couldn't do it. I had to fire them as a client. I couldn't take it anymore. They kept on doing all their crazy family characters from when they were kids.
And she would leave the wigs on the stage. It was gross.
There wasn't even an intermission to give me a chance to leave and not come back. And
right. Because I saw Art.
Oh, you did? Yeah, I heard it was a wonderful play.
Alfred Molina do that 2-minute monologue.
Mm-hmm.
And before Hamilton, it was the single most amazing theater experience that I'd ever had.
Uh-huh. And I had resisted seeing Hamilton. I've not seen it live. I had not seen it live. It was one of those things where everyone raved about it to such high heaven that I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to see it now because you've destroyed it for me. I'm expecting transcendence, and you can't expect it. You can't be ahead of it. You have to let it visit you, because if I had known nothing about it, I would have sat back and thought, oh, you're not going to fucking rap, are you? And that, oh, everybody's a different color. All right, I get it. And then I'd start to let it wash over me and realize these are actually really good lyrics. That's really impressive what they just did. Damn, she's got a nice voice. Damn, she's got an amazing voice. This is pretty awesome. And by the time King George comes out, I would have been just la da 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 da. And so, yeah, I understand.
Yeah, there's no way it could live up to the hype.
Yeah, exactly. And was it Robert Evans, the producer extraordinaire, one of his favorite things to say was, sense of discovery is what makes this business, is what makes life so worth it. The fact that you weren't expecting something and it just bloomed in front of you makes everything so worth it, especially if you're seeing it live.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are occasionally things that transcend expectation.
Yeah.
Prince live.
Yeah, there's no way you could build Prince up too much for me. Right.
And did you finally see the Hamilton on tape?
I have not. Yeah, I haven't seen it live. We've seen it on Disney Plus, and we only get to watch stuff after the kids are finally asleep, which means at midnight we get to fire up the old Disney Plus. So we've seen half of it, and we really enjoyed it. We just haven't had a chance to go back and see the other half, which apparently is maybe even better than the first half.
Yeah.
So we got to get back.
Actually, Hamilton is one of those things that actually is better than the hype. Because I'd heard amazing things about it and got to see it, and it blew me away so hard that weekend I told a friend of mine. She's like, "Well, we found some tickets, but they're $400." I'm like, "Do it.
Yeah.
Spend that money.
Mm-hmm.
You will not regret it."
Oh yeah.
And then I saw her on Sunday, and she's like, "Thank you." I've never had anybody thank me.
Yeah.
For making them spend $400.
I went to see, and a lot of this is owed to my wife. Prince is her Mount Olympus. He's everyone in the Parthenon for her. and she loves live performing. And I could actually make a case that Prince might be the single greatest artist of the 20th century. Because if you get down to it, show me another artist that sold as much as him. Okay, Michael Jackson, Bruce Springsteen, those guys, Billy Joel. Did they produce their albums? No, they did not. Did they write every single lyric? No, they did not. Did they play every instrument? Because Prince could if he wanted to. And most of the time he did. That band was with them for touring. And yeah, he'd record with them too. But he could play every one of their instruments. And all right, so name me somebody who did all of that and sold the way he did and got critical acclaim.
Well, and create, I mean, aesthetically, what he created in terms of his brand, his persona, what he did on all of those, just visually. Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. For people on the chat, I challenge you.
And for how long?
Yeah, exactly. I challenge you.
The breadth of that.
Yeah. People could say, well, Bob Dylan. Maybe Bob Dylan wrote more lyrics that had more of an impact, maybe. But from about, 81 to about 92, 93, everything Prince did, even the throwaways, were amazing. I mean, amazing. Like 10 out of 10 for me. Even filler stuff. I thought I can go back and listen to that now and think, damn, what must it have been like to walk around being him, knowing I'm just awesome.
Well, apparently it was hard.
Yeah, apparently not a nice guy. So yeah, but I once spent over $3,000 to get 2 tickets because I bought them last minute. I spent $3,000, $3,300, I believe, for tickets for my wife and myself to see Bruno Mars at the Hollywood Bowl, but we were close. And It was Bruno Mars, and opening up for him was Pharrell. And I have to admit, that was a pretty amazing show. And when Bruno Mars, halfway through his set, said, by the way, we used to play over on Sunset Boulevard at a bar about a mile away from here. And for about 20 minutes, they did their bar set. And they started off by playing Whole Lotta Love by Led Zeppelin. They said, this is what we were playing in a bar 5 years ago on Sunset. And he starts singing, you need coolin'. And it was amazing. And I thought,
dude, I was there.
You probably were. You probably saw him do one of his bar sets. Oh, were you at that concert?
I was not as close as you. But we were there at the ball.
Yeah. It was a fantastic show. The best show I've ever seen was Sting and Peter Gabriel. I never got to see Prince live. I saw Sting and Peter Gabriel come to the Bowl a few years ago, and it was amazing because if you grew up when we grew up, those two guys, for me, were half of what I've listened to. And to hear them go through their catalog like that, and for Peter Gabriel to sound exactly like he did in 1986, I thought, this is amazing. I'm so glad I had money. Sometimes having money is, I'm not ashamed. Sometimes. Yeah, no, I'm always happy that I have it. This was a roundabout way. I think I started this point 30 minutes ago, but yeah, the gray area of the internet, that's one reason why people are afraid to get in some of these conversations. And two, people hate feeling uncomfortable. And so when you get into Me Too and cancel culture and racism and privilege and all of that, there's not a black and white answer, pardon the pun, for a lot of this stuff. It is situational. It is nuanced. It is very dependent on the context, but people hate feeling uncomfortable. And so a lot of them just steer clear of it.
Right. Well, that's what's been interesting about a lot of the stuff happening this year is there are people who are realizing that there is a value to some of these uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
And that I think is really important because that's when you start to get real understanding and that's when you start to get real societal change.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are like, oh, as opposed to someone just responding to, oh, wow, those people over there seem really upset. Let's just get them to be quiet.
Yeah.
Which is what I felt like happened after the Rodney King riots. Like nobody really dug deep into racism.
Yeah.
After the Rodney King riots.
Right.
But now we're having conversations about like, well, wait, why are people upset? Why am I feeling uncomfortable? Why? You know, and unfortunately, we also now have the internet, which is pushing us constantly to not dig deeper, to not look further into the context and the nuance and look at another point of view.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Facebook, that algorithm is trying desperately to keep you locked in your bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody I know says blah, 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 blah. Like,
yes,
okay, you're not learning anything.
My wife and I have this conversation a lot because I have a journalism degree, and what we learned in journalism is still applicable today, in that objectivity is paramount. Objectivity is necessary because the person reading what you're writing needs to be able to trust that you are accurately relaying the facts of the event that you're describing, without spin, without hopefully any bias. And obviously there's always going to be a little bit, sometimes by omission, sometimes by inclusion, but they need to trust that you're writing from a point of absolute objectivity, so they know what's actually happening in the world, and then they can put their own spin on it.
And they probably taught you that you needed to make an effort.
Yes.
To write from objectivity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And if you want to start spinning it, fine. There's the op-ed column. You can have your own syndicated column where you can opine, all of that, but it doesn't make it into the news. That does not exist now because things have become very fractured. George Clooney, whose father was a legendary anchorman in Kentucky, said this very succinctly a few years ago. He said, news has become very niche. If you have an ideology, there's a network that can cater to it. And this was before the internet completely just devoured it. And now it isn't just a network that will cater to it. They have an algorithm that will figure out what you like and will give you more of it. And before you know it, you have created your own cage, and you're just getting these little sugar pills, these little pellets that keep getting dropped because you are, I don't know, you fed into a loop.
Right. Well, and that's actually part of what's even more insidious about it. It's not just the things that you like that they're feeding you. It's also the things that you fear.
Yeah.
And the things that make you angry. It's whatever will get you to engage.
Yeah. Lizard brain.
Because we were talking about this earlier. We now live in a world where attention is a commodity unto itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You can sell eyeballs.
Yeah.
Like, you create widgets? Nope. But I got a guy who I have 1 million people who watch me hold widgets and unbox them.
Yeah. I know. This is when I talked to you about this yesterday. We do our tech test the day before usually. And you said there was something you couldn't get your head around, that your son had paid an influencer $50 to write a song for them, or to work on a song.
To use his song.
Okay. Gotcha. To use their song. Correct. And you said, I can't wrap my head around that. And I was telling you about how it works on YouTube. Like, I get some viewers for this stream, and then I take the video, I put it on YouTube, and the more views I get, the more I'm able to monetize it because I put ads in. And yes, you are monetizing viewership, which is not a new concept. That's what advertising is. But now the fact that
on a personal level.
Yeah.
That's where I realized, because what my son is doing as a musician is the same thing that has been done, you know, as long as there's been media.
Right.
You know, when somebody put an ad in the London Times in 1864,
yeah,
you know, but now it's not a company, you know, Werther's Candies presents. It's now you or I on a personal level finding someone else on a personal level and paying them money for the attention that they can get, as opposed to it happening on this company-wide or institutional level. You're right. It's exactly the same thing on a completely different scale.
Yeah. And it is hard. I spoke about this with Rob Paulson. My kids, we wanted to teach them the value of money. And my son turned 9 yesterday. My daughter will be 7 next week. And this was a few years ago. My wife talked about this with me. This was around the time we were going to encourage them to get a lemonade stand. build your lemonade stand and put it out front and sell your lemonade, and you'll learn how to make a few dollars. And then we're going to teach you how to save that money, how to spend it, how to appreciate money. This is commerce. Teach them how to be in the stream of commerce. And then my son started booking jobs as a voice actor. He gets paid $1,000 to bark into a mic like I do. I tell him how much money he's going to make. I tell him about taxes, what taxes are. And then I let him keep $40 out of every paycheck. And I realized that on a good day, a lemonade stand's not going to make $40. And you need a permit to have a lemonade stand because someone will complain about your lemonade stand and the cops will shut you down. And it's, that if you put up a lemonade stand and one neighbor, it only takes one, calls and says, I don't know how they're making that lemonade. That could have salmonella in it. They're selling chocolate chip cookies. I don't know who baked the chocolate chip cookies. The police have to come and shut you down. Yeah, it's usually a civil. It's usually some sort of city ordinance.
Are you in like an all lawyer neighborhood or something?
Pretty much. Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Everyone in our building is a lawyer. Where I'm like the only person in the arts. Everyone else is basically a lawyer or a retired lawyer. And I think they'd all be cool, but it only takes one person. And to avoid that, you need a permit. To get a permit, you have to go through the city, and it's $500 to have a permit for a lemonade stand. Or you could just trust that no one in your neighborhood is going to drop a dime on you. And I thought, well, forget the lemonade stand. He's making this, doing this stuff. And so it's odd teaching your 9-year-old, who when he joined the union, he was 6, teaching him the concept of money and the concept of work when the very idea of that is changing.
See, now that's really interesting because I remember my son did, plays in elementary school. He's 19 now.
Uh-huh.
And at one point he said, Dad, when can I do acting? Like, you are doing acting. So you're doing your summer, your little Shakespeare musical. You're doing, it's like, no, real acting like you do. I'm like, well, I don't know if that's so. It's like, but I'm really good. And he had that like pop.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, but professional acting, real acting is a job.
Yeah.
And if you were really good at working in a factory, I wouldn't send you to do that either. You already complained that Hebrew school doesn't have enough outside time.
Yeah.
I mean, you're lucky your son's doing voiceover, which is so much more humane.
Yes. We have been very careful about any on-camera auditions. In fact, right now he's not doing any of them, partially because he just doesn't want to, and they're drudgery because you have to self-tape. And partially because I don't want him going to a set now. I don't care what your protocols are. It's not going to be safe. So, but...
and also because one of you is going to have to go with him, so you're doubling your risk right away.
Yeah, and even before the pandemic, he was up to read for something that if he had booked it, they'd be shooting in Vancouver or maybe on the other side of the country. And first of all, our family doesn't spend time apart. We just don't do it. And so I said, if he actually got it, you'd have to go... and our daughter would have to go with you because there's no way you're splitting the kids up. And I would not see you guys for weeks and weeks. And like, I'm not going to do that. And we had the conversation. Is it worth it for him? Because maybe it's a big part, maybe this and that. And I thought, he's 8. If he books it, so what? So what? How many actors book something at the age of 8 that determined who they were at 30? I joined the union at 30. Okay, right. So I'm not going to put pressure on him to do anything, to go out for any part. Nope. So I just said no to reading for a job where they said, David Fincher will be on the set directing you. And I said, I can't read for it. I don't care who it is. It's not going to be safe. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, absolutely. To that end, you actually were in discussions yesterday, or you were part of a seminar?
I'm part of the union animation committee.
Okay.
And one of the things that's, happening right now is, we're trying to figure out how or if people can safely record, voiceover during the pandemic.
Right.
And it's tough because nobody really knows, even the scientists, you find one epidemiologist who says this, like that whole thing, like we had, they had some protocols in place
Right.
after California reopened because they had to.
Yeah.
Because then it became this whole thing where the state says studios can open now.
Mm-hmm.
So the union couldn't just go, we're not allowing our members to do that. That would have effectively been a strike.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to okay, well, let's figure out some safety protocols, but it's really difficult. I think people have been working in studios. The studios have been open for a month. Then that whole thing happened where these scientists wrote a letter to the World Health Organization saying, you guys aren't thinking about aerosolization. Oh, so the biggest health organization in the world hasn't really been thinking about the thing that really affects people who stand in a room talking for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
And so it gets really scary because all right, I mean, I'm lucky. I'm one of the, I've got a nice setup at home,
right,
like you,
mm-hmm.
But not everybody does. And so how do you keep people safe and who do you listen to?
Yeah. That's the hardest part, authority. And
the horrible thing is, until enough people get sick or this thing is around for long enough for them to do long-term studies,
mm-hmm.
we're not going to have definitive knowledge.
No. Was there a timeline you guys talked about? Were there any conclusions, or was it more, we just need to get a bunch of this stuff into the ether talking about it so that we might be able to suss out some important information going forward? Was it basically just a back and forth?
No, it's just an ongoing discussion. I mean,
okay.
There are a lot of us who just feel let's lean as far to, towards the line of safety. It's well, how long is it in the air? We don't know. Let's mandate that, 1 actor a day.
Yeah. That's yeah. And I'm a big believer in the scientific method and the Socratic method. So give me all the available data. And again, unbiased, just give it to me raw. Now, or give me an authority that I trust to be objective to tell me what that data means. And then, and that's where you run into trouble, because then I can apply the Socratic method, because once you use a scientific method, you've reached your conclusion based on a responsible hypothesis. You've experimented, you've tested it out. Now I have a conclusion. Now we can use the Socratic method to ask questions about the meaning of it and get to a place where an adult would arrive. But because of the old
reasonable adult.
Yeah, I know. Reasonable is in high demand these days because of these algorithms. People are fed authority messages for people who are not authorities. They just cater to your biases. And so that's why I rarely go into politics here, but I stopped Facebook after the election in 2016 because I realized we are a nation full of different conversations about the exact same thing, but we don't agree on reality. And so I stopped arguing with certain people because I realized I can't even agree on the same reality as you, because you're getting your messages from a place that you think is authoritative.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the toughest things as a rational person these days, is that, to me, the death of expertise. And you're seeing it all across
the board.
It's well, my doctor said this, but I read an article on the internet that said this. It's yeah, but you don't have 8 years of medical school and 15 years of practice.
Right.
Maybe what he reads on the internet might have a little more weight than what you read.
Yeah.
His ability to interpret it? Nah.
I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where a person who is no good at something is probably also not smart enough to realize they don't have the awareness to believe. And my uncle once said this to me, my uncle who went to Harvard and Penn, double Ivy. Waspy much, Chris? He is a psychologist, and he told me once, to my brothers, we were younger, and he says, the problem is you don't know what you don't know. And so without a basic level of awareness, you aren't aware of when you're making mistakes. And I make frequent mistakes, but I keep a constant level of awareness and self-examination going. I started every morning with my stretch, my breaths, the way I talk to myself. I tell myself, be loving and patient and kind. Remember, you have this little thing that you like to do. Don't do it. It's a constant oil change so that I will spot a mistake as quickly as I can. But I have noticed that most people don't do that. That requires work and it requires feeling uncomfortable.
Well, and also think about it. I mean, the way our society is moving, what you're talking about, how would you, if you don't know enough to make the right move, how do you know if it's wrong?
Exactly.
You have to look outside yourself.
Right.
For signs.
Right.
You know, if I have my shoes on backwards, my feet hurt.
Yeah.
You know, or, you know, someone might point and go, dude, what's up with your feet?
Mm-hmm.
But we live in a world now where these fucking foot shoe Nazis are constantly coming down on. It's like, no, your shoes are on backward. No, everybody I know wears their shoes just like me. What? So, like, if you're not willing to open yourself up to the questioning,
yeah,
you know, either internally or based on signals you're getting externally,
mm-hmm.
then you are abandoning intelligence.
Yeah. And it is, my wife has done this before. She's much smarter than me. And I don't say that to be the put upon deferential husband. Isn't he cute saying that? No. If we took IQ tests, she would score higher than me. I just know this. I just know probably a good 15 points above me. But she sometimes...
That's just you patting yourself on the back. This beautiful, brilliant woman changed me.
Oh, I have very flexible arms. I can reach around and pat myself on the back in any position. I know how to passively praise myself. Yeah. I think she would, she would be, I keep forgetting the phrase of it, but when you're looking at categories of scoring, she would be 2 categories above me, I believe, because we've talked about, here's what I scored and here's what you scored. But she sometimes is baffled at the idea that somebody who is intelligent can do something stupid. And I say to her all the time, I said, baby, and I just call her baby, and I'm not oppressing her. It's just she loves when I call her baby. I said, baby, intellectual quotient is not emotional, quotient. That there are people who are brilliant, but they are emotional children. They have never grown up, and they constantly make stupid mistakes, even though they could describe relativity and quantum mechanics to you, but they act like toddlers sometimes. But she always thought the two were, if you were smart, you were also wise. I said, no, smart is not wise. They're different things.
Yes. We've seen that time and time again.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of Sam Harris. He's a neuroscientist and talks a lot about just about everything, but he approaches it from a purely scientific point of view as much as he can. And he said something that I've always remembered. He said, we only have 2 ways to solve differences: conversation and violence. That's it. Those are the only 2 ways you can do it. All right? If you can't use one, you end up using the other. And so he says, you better learn how to solve a difference with someone with conversation, because you don't want to go the other route. And what he is worried about is he sees the same thing we see: a breakdown in people trusting expertise and a breakdown in people being able to think critically.
Yes.
So when you lose those things, you are ripe for an authoritarian to come along and tell you what to think.
Right. Because, and especially in a short attention span society, simple answers. Trains running on time.
Yes.
Hey, everything's great.
I know. For you non-history buffs, Mussolini won his first election, I think his only actual election that he allowed, on one promise: I'll make the trains run on time. Because apparently the Italians at the time couldn't hit their ass with both hands. The trains never ran on time. And apparently, to his only credit, the train started running on time. But then all that other shit happened.
Right.
So,
well, if someone's got a gun to your head and said, make sure you get to the station by this time.
Oh, yeah.
That train's going to run on time.
Yeah. Yeah. Our problem is we didn't even have trains running on time. We didn't even get that. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
But actually, it's funny. Speaking of scientists, I'm actually later today. I got to head over there now, doing this Q&A with a couple of astronomers.
Oh, nice.
It's part of this thing with Caltech called Universe Unplugged, where we look at these incredible visuals. Today, we're going to be looking at the Orion Nebula.
Oh, nice.
And I'm going to be trying to decipher a bunch of big words I don't know. But I'll have very smart people on with me to help.
Which is very smart of you. You know how to, like I always said, I'm a paper mache intellectual. I know how to use the words to come off as intellectual, but if you push on it, it just rips. If you push it on, it's like, how lovely. Look at that. Oh, it's kind of an idiot underneath there. Okay.
Oh, I thought this was stone.
Yeah, I thought this was just this lovely formica and it's tissue paper. Okay. Does that mean you have to leave now?
I do.
Okay. Well, we never got into the one thing that we said we were going to talk about too, and that was I'll have to bring you back. If I even start it now, there's no way we can wrap it up in a minute.
No.
All right. Well, suffice it to say, if you see Phil LaMarr's name invoked on Twitter when it comes to the casting question and representation, keep his name the fuck out your mouth, as you said. And it's not because he doesn't want to talk about it. It's because he'd rather have a nuanced
now we have here. What I will say is
30-second elevator pitch.
30-second elevator pitch. My issue with the conversation around, actors, not playing characters of color, whatever, is people aren't taking into, aren't thinking about the context, the intention, the audience, and when those decisions were made. And also, people are focusing on the actors. And I said this to Chris earlier. To me, going at actors about a controversial casting decision is like attacking car salesmen because there's a brake line issue with your car. Yes, they sold it to you, but they didn't build it. They didn't make the decision. They didn't make the mistake. So it means your focus is in the wrong place. We should be talking about the studios, the producers, who made the decisions, and looking into why they made those decisions. Because a decision made 2 years ago is a very different decision than the one made 30 years ago.
Right.
So, and just my take on it is there are two aspects to the representation issue in animation. There is a practical and a principle. To me, on principle, any actor in any realm should be able to play any role they can believably portray. That's our job as actors, is to take these fictional things and make them real for the audience. It's why I can't play Rambo on screen.
Well,
nobody's going to believe me as a Vietnam era, combat guy. But, if everything was equal, anybody who should, in voiceover should be able to play whatever they can voice. But on the practical level, the playing field is not equal. The number of roles available in animation skew sizably towards white males. So, and there is also a problematic history of white performers playing characters of color in mocking or unflattering ways. You mentioned Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah.
Or the history of minstrelsy.
Yeah.
We can't ignore those things. And anytime a white actor plays a black character, it calls that back. So it's a little problematic. But the issue I had was people were coming at me. It's like, well, you play white characters all the time. And like, yes, not all the time. Most of the characters I play are, present black. But also it's not the same thing. A person of color playing a white role is not the same thing as a white person playing a character of color because of the history and because of the practical part of it. Most of the roles aren't of color. So, whenever I go up for a white guy role, I'm competing with you.
Yeah.
And all the other white guys.
Usually you're booking it, though. You bastard.
So there's the practice. I mean, there's the practicality.
Yeah.
If 10% of the roles are characters of color, let us have those.
Yeah.
Just so actors of color can make a living.
Right.
But we do get into a weird thing with animation because characters of color can mean blue.
Yeah. Yes.
And aliens and inanimate objects, which, how do those count towards representation?
Yeah.
Is
How
Mrs.
do you?
Potts in, Beauty and the Beast, white? I mean, the pot itself is white.
Right.
And Angela Lansbury is white, but is the character white? And that's when we get into the nuance.
Yeah. Lots of nuance. Yeah. I played a Jedi in Clone Wars, and he's green. And yet they said, we want sort of an Indian Pakistan accent. And I gave them that. And, I imagine it was believable enough. I don't think I could show up in Mumbai and convince anyone, even if they just heard my voice. But for that character, because there's no India in space, there's no Pakistan in space. That's something we wanted a particular sound, but we couldn't even regionalize it any more than that. So there was no hue and cry over that, and I can understand that because they're not satirizing or parodying or making a comment on that culture. That's just the vocal texture they wanted for that character. But yeah.
Well, actually, I'm going to go.
All right, let me hear the other side.
Well, no, because the problem is there are things that we associate orally.
Yes, true.
With races and cultures.
Yes.
And I mean, I've had people on the phone who did not believe I was black.
Like Black Klansmen.
Because I was talking like this, And if I'm talking like this is me. This is how a black man sounds. Mm-hmm. But it is not typically. It's not a sound someone would associate typically with this. So if I were instead to be talking more like this, and to do this voice as a character, this is something that would read, even if I play this as a giant block of wood on Doc McStuffins.
Right.
That's a black character. And you and I both know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the same as if we voice the wooden block like this. Mm-hmm. We know where that character's coming from. So it's a little disingenuous of us to say, well, he's an alien. And especially when we're talking about George Lucas, because we saw the prequels.
Oh, yeah. Well, the prequels, they're up there with bad improv for me. But... But
what are the guys who run the Federation? The Trade Federation.
I remember seeing that and thinking, why do you have him talk like that? What are you trying to say? Yeah, I understand that. So point taken. Although my character was only in one episode, and I never got to learn much about the character. I don't know why they made that particular choice, but it seemed to reflect absolutely nothing else about them. Right. I think it was just a sound they liked. But yes, someone on the chat says, I'm Indian. Hi, Krish born to rule. I don't know if you're familiar with the character I played at all. But hey, if you want to say, no, actually, I took offense to it, great. It would be helpful for me to know that. So, yeah.
Well, now, Chris, here's where the nuance comes into it. Because the fact of the matter is, whether someone takes offense probably has to do with the degree of it. Mm-hmm. What are you doing with that accent?
Exactly.
How much is it used?
Right.
Like you and I were talking about Soul Man, a movie in blackface that in 87?
86. Yeah. 86. And he never once tried to sound like a black person in it either without it playing for a laugh. Yeah.
Which was probably what made it less offensive at the time.
Yeah.
But also black people at the time didn't give a shit because we weren't watching it. Yeah. And nobody we knew were watching it.
Yeah.
And it didn't become a huge thing. Nobody looked at that as representative of black culture. So we're like, yeah, let them do whatever they want over there.
Right.
But Had it been a hit, then the circumstances might have changed. Then you might have found people offended by it.
Yeah. No, true. It becomes much more of a thing, and it's hard to ignore it. Yeah. With the character I did, the accent was not much more than this. It was fairly light. He worked with me on it, and that is Goth, the Jedi. So, yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, given that context and those producers who made that decision, they were looking for a flavor, not a race.
Right. Right. And that's well, I guess what I mean by a texture or whatever adjectives we want to use, that was my sense of it. And that's why,
is, we do have to ask ourselves a question like, is that okay?
Yeah. I honestly,
it's a question to be answered, but to me, it's not automatically racist.
No. I think, racism is, it's a term that's another one. It's a very nuanced thing. My grandparents were racists, okay? And they didn't have a mean bone in their body, but some of the things that came out of their mouth, I would just say, there's no way that's anything but racist. There's just no chance that it's not that. This is the Deep South. I know what you're saying. And they were the nicest people. They were nice to everybody. Everybody, no matter what color you were. But they grew up in a different time. And that was just a racist time to be alive.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There was probably a default of behavior and understanding that we would now categorize as racist.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting because I have a big problem with the word racist. Because where we are now with our level of understanding, we need more words.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too.
We have that one word that people are applying to putting a chain around a black man and dragging him with your pickup truck.
Yeah.
And to saying, "Can I touch your hair?"
Yeah.
One word cannot cover that breadth.
Right. Like there's my granddad and there's David Duke. All right. And never the twain shall meet. Yes. And this is why I understand how some new terms have come about. I hate the word microaggression because I think it's absolutely abused. You pointed like this when you made a point. That's a microaggression. I don't even know what to do with that. You're trying to control the conversation because you're uncomfortable about something. But I do understand that sometimes one word doesn't cover the spectrum of a person making a mistake. And so, yes, people have said, "Can I touch your hair?" as a microaggression. If there's no better way to describe that, fine. But yeah, what is a microaggression on the chat? Don't even get me started. But yes,
Google it.
Yes, it is inappropriate for you to walk up and say, "Can I touch your hair?" It's like, I don't know you. I don't know why you want to touch my hair, but I have a clue, and it already is making me feel uncomfortable. Okay? No, you're not David Duke, but let's start a conversation.
Right.
So,
here's my other metaphor. Racism is like reptiles.
Okay.
They are all related.
Yeah.
But they are not the same, and you do not react to them all the same way. If there's a T-Rex coming at you with its, slathering teeth, you react strongly.
Yeah.
If there's a little tiny lizard, that's, running across your table, you maybe take a picture and you're not, the reaction, they are all reptiles.
Yeah.
They are all coming from the same, genus or whatever. I don't know what that word means.
But neither do I. It's because I'm not a genus like some people.
But, oh, crap. See?
I know, you got to go. I tell you what, we're just going to call some of that behavior strikes me as vaguely reptilian, sir, and I would like you to examine it.
See, and that's the funny thing is because people get it.
Yeah.
That reptiles,
I get it.
A Komodo dragon.
Yeah.
Versus, a little tiny frog.
Yeah.
I'm not scared of the frog at all.
No.
But that Komodo dragon, that is dangerous.
Yes, and that's what you do about it. I use this to talk about the left and the right. I see some things the left does when it goes too far. I say, that's a problem. But you are slow-moving lava. What I see on the right is a forest fire, okay? So, yeah, not to put you guys who watch my stream know my politics. We have some lava on the left. I would like to address it eventually, but there's a goddamn forest fire coming. and it's already burning. I mean, some of this trees we're never going to get to grow again. So why don't we do something about it? All right.
Nice metaphor. I like that.
Yes, thank you. You can use that, and I'll use your reptile one. So we're exchanging. This has been a good metaphor exchange. Sir, you are as advertised, lovely and talented and amazing. And one day I'll get you back on, and we'll talk about voiceover. We never even got it. We'll talk about the 8 million roles you've played, which I didn't get into any of them. But that's what I like. I would rather just chat. I like that stuff.
I mean, we were overdue for a nice long convo.
It's been a while. The last time we talked, I think, was about softball because we played co-ed softball together. And I thought, Jesus, I thought I was fast. I can't keep up with Phil. That guy stretches everything into a double. Oh, man. That was amazing.
That was a while ago.
That was a while ago, yeah. My vertical is gone. My hamstrings are gone. Everything's gone. Oh, well, it's the 50s. All right, Phil, thank you so much for your work on our behalf with the union and for everything you do and for having this conversation with me and for giving me a new way to look at a lot of these things.
Beautiful, man. And yes, it was great talking with you. Best to your wife and your family, all right?
And to you. All right. Take care.
Be well.
Be well.